Now I want to start today with a sound, because if you have ever kept animals through a hard freeze, you already know it. It is about 5:30 in the morning. The north wind is pushing against the side of the house, the yard light has got ice shining under it, and you turn the kitchen faucet. Nothing. Not a cough, not a spit, not one little rattle in the pipe. Just silence. And that silence will wake you up faster than coffee, because the first thing that comes into your head is not the sink. It is the cattle tank at the back pasture. Then the chickens. Then the little trough by the calving lot. Then the exposed line behind the barn that you promised yourself you were going to insulate before winter, right after you finished everything else. I learned that lesson during a Texas freeze that was supposed to last one night and stayed long enough to tear up half the county. By the time the sun came out, I had one split pipe under the barn, a float valve cracked clean through, a stock tank wearing 3 inches of ice, and 37 head of cattle standing around looking at me like I had personally misplaced their water. I spent right around $1,800 getting that mess put back together. That number includes plumbing parts, a new pressure switch, a replacement hydrant, 2 tank heaters I bought at the last store in town that still had any, and a service call from a plumber who was worth every penny but charged like a man who knew he was the only plumber answering his phone. But the money was not the worst part. The worst part was hauling water in the dark, chopping ice with an axe, carrying 5-gallon buckets through a gate that had frozen to the post, and finding out that every little shortcut I had taken in October had turned into a full-sized emergency in January. So today I'm going to lay the whole thing out straight. I am going to tell you what the real winter water problem is, why most folks prepare for the wrong failure, and the 7 places a farm water system usually quits when the temperature drops. We will count them down from 7 to 1, and number 1 is the mistake that cost me more time than every frozen pipe on the place put together. And then I will show you the simple system I use now, what it cost, what I check before a freeze, and what I keep on the shelf so a $12 part does not turn into a 12-hour crisis. Now, before we go any farther, I need to say something important. Texas is a big state, and winter in Amarillo is not winter in Houston. A setup that works through a 28-degree night in East Texas may not survive 10 degrees with a 40-mile-an-hour wind up on the panhandle. Your frost depth, your soil, your power supply, your water source, and the kind of animals you keep all matter. And electricity around water can kill you. If you use a tank heater, heat cable, extension cord, or heated bucket, use equipment rated for that exact job. Protect it with a working ground fault circuit. Keep every connection dry and off the ground, and follow the manufacturer instead of a fellow on the internet, including me. If you are not sure about the wiring, call an electrician. Livestock do not need a clever farmer. They need a live one. All right, let us talk about the problem nobody warns you about. Most folks think the winter water problem is ice. It is not. Ice is only the part you can see. The real problem is that a farm water system is a chain, and cold weather only has to break one link. The well can be running perfectly while the pressure switch is frozen. The buried line can be fine while the riser at the trough is solid. The tank can be open while the float valve has quit. The heater can be hot while the breaker has tripped. You can have 1,000 gallons of water under the ground and not one drink available above it. That is what caught me. I had prepared the tanks, I had not prepared the system. There is a difference. A cow does not care that your well works. She cares whether water reaches her mouth. A chicken does not care that the hydrant was expensive. She cares whether the little cup in front of her has water in it. Winter exposes every foot between the source and the animal, and most of the trouble happens in the last 10 feet. So here we go. 7 winter water failures nobody warned me about. Counting down. Coming in at number 7, the hose you thought you drained. I used to leave a 100-foot hose stretched from the barn hydrant to the little trough in the lot. In summer, that hose saved me 20 minutes a day. In winter, it cost me nearly a whole morning. I had shut the hydrant off, picked up one end of the hose, and watched water run out. Looked empty to me. What I did not see was the low place where the hose dipped under the gate. A couple gallons stayed trapped in that belly, froze solid, and made a plug about 4 feet long. Next morning, I needed water at the trough. I opened the hydrant, nothing came out of the far end. And because I was cold and in a hurry, I did what cold and hurried men have done since the invention of plumbing. I turned the pressure up and started bending the hose. That split it in 2 places. Now I had no water where I needed it, and a hose that sprayed like a lawn sprinkler after it thawed. The fix is almost embarrassingly simple. Disconnect both ends. A hose connected to a closed hydrant can hold water even when you think it is drained. Walk the hose from one end to the other, lifting every section, then coil it on a slope or hang it where both ends point down. If I am going to use one during a freeze, I drain it the minute I am done. Not after lunch, not when I finish feeding. Right then. And do not trust those quick connect fittings in cold weather. They hold a little pocket of water. That pocket freezes, swells, and either locks the fitting or cracks the cheap ones. I keep brass repair ends, hose washers, and one short black rubber hose in the pump room now. Rubber stays more cooperative in the cold than a stiff vinyl hose, and a 25-foot hose is easier to drain than a 100-foot snake laid across 3 different elevations. That sounds like a small detail, but winter water trouble is mostly small details that got cold. Number 6. The float valve that looks fine from 10 feet away. A stock tank float valve is a beautiful little thing when it works. The cattle drink, the level drops, the float opens the valve, and the tank fills itself while you go do something else. But that valve has small moving parts, narrow passages, rubber seals, and usually one little section sitting right where the cold wind can reach it. In other words, it is the most delicate part of the whole setup, and we put it outside. The year I got in trouble, the tank still had water in it, so I checked it from the truck and kept moving. That was my mistake. The surface looked normal, but the float arm had frozen in the up position. The cattle drank the level down all afternoon, and the valve never opened. By evening, I had a tank that was nearly empty, a frozen valve, and no daylight left. That is the kind of failure nobody notices until the reserve is gone. Now, before cold weather, I take every float cover off and work the valve by hand. I look for a bent arm, a sticky pivot, a worn seal, mineral buildup, and any crack in the body. I make sure the supply line has a shutoff I can actually reach. Then I put the cover back on and block the north wind without boxing the thing so tight I cannot inspect it. Wind matters more than folks give it credit for. A valve tucked behind a simple piece of plywood can behave completely different from one taking the full north wind. I am not trying to heat the whole pasture. I am trying to keep moving air from stealing heat out of one vulnerable fitting. I also keep a complete spare valve on the shelf, not just a washer kit. A spare costs less than a tank of diesel. When it is 17 degrees and your gloves are wet, that is not the moment to rebuild a tiny valve in the mud. Shut off the line, swap the whole assembly, carry the frozen one to the shop, and fix it where your fingers work. One more thing. Check the flow, not just the level.
Push the float down and watch how fast water enters. A valve can be partly frozen or clogged and still pass enough water to fool you. If 30 cows can drink faster than that valve can refill, you do not have an automatic water system. You have a slowly emptying tank. Number 5. The frost-free hydrant that was not frost-free anymore. I used to think a frost-free hydrant was magic. Pull the handle up, water comes out. Push it down, and somehow winter leaves it alone. There is no magic in it. The shutoff is buried below the frost line, and when you close the handle, the water in the upright pipe drains out through a little port underground. It survives because the exposed pipe is supposed to be empty. Supposed to be. If the drain port is blocked, if the ground around it is packed with clay, if the hydrant is adjusted wrong, if a hose is left attached, or if the head leaks just enough to keep feeding water back into the riser, that pipe stays full. Then you do not own a frost-free hydrant. You own a 4-foot steel ice mold. Mine had been getting slower for 2 winters. I would shut it off and hear a weak little gurgle, but I never checked it because it had not failed yet. That phrase has cost farmers more money than bad weather ever did. It has not failed yet. During the freeze, it froze solid. I put a heat lamp near it, which was a poor answer and a fire risk. And then I tried pouring hot water over the head. The top thawed, the buried section did not, and the temperature change cracked an old fitting I could not see. When the ground finally warmed, the leak showed up as a wet patch and a well pump that would not quit cycling. That repair meant digging down in cold mud beside a post where 3 different lines crossed. I would rather pull a calf in a thunderstorm than do that again. Here's how I test one now. I open it, let it run, shut it firmly, and listen. I want to hear it drain. Then I hold my hand under the spout. A little suction at the spout tells me water is leaving the riser. Some folks use a cup over the spout and watch the water pull back. However you do it, prove that it drains before the freeze arrives. Never leave a hose connected to a frost-free hydrant in freezing weather. That hose can keep the hydrant from draining, and the name stamped on the casting will not save it. I put a bright tag on each handle in November that says, "Disconnect hose," because a reminder is cheaper than pretending I never forget. And if the hydrant leaks at the head, fix it now. A drip is not harmless in winter. A drip becomes an ice column, and an ice column holds the valve where it should not be. Number 4. The electric heater that works right up until you need it. After my first bad freeze, I bought tank heaters and thought I had solved winter. That lasted about 2 days. The heater was in the tank. The little indicator light was on. The water around it was open. I felt pretty smart. Then a cow rubbed the cord against the edge of the tank. Water got where it should not have, and the ground fault outlet tripped. That outlet did exactly what it was built to do. The problem was that I did not know it had tripped until the next morning, when the tank had a lid of ice and the heater was nothing but an expensive piece of cold metal. Electric heat is not a system unless you verify the power every day. Now I plug heaters only into properly installed, weather-protected ground fault circuits. I secure the cord so Livestock cannot chew it, step on it, pull it, or rub it across a sharp edge. I do not bury an extension cord connection under a feed sack or wrap it in a grocery bag and call that weatherproof. I use outdoor rated equipment and proper covers, and I keep plugs up off the ground. But the most important thing I changed was the inspection. During a freeze, I touch the water near the heater, check the open area, inspect the cord, and test whether the circuit still has power. A heater can fail. A breaker can trip. A plug can loosen. A thermostat can stick. If your whole plan depends on one electrical device and you never look at it,
Your plan is hope wearing a cord. The wattage matters too. A little heated bucket element may keep 10 gallons open in a sheltered coop and do nearly nothing in a 600-gallon metal tank taking a north wind. Bigger is not automatically better either. Too much heat wastes electricity, can damage plastic equipment, and does not excuse a poor installation. The cheapest heat is the heat you do not lose. Put the tank where it gets winter sun if you can. Block the wind. Insulate the sides with material livestock cannot eat or tear apart. Use an approved insulated cover that still gives every animal safe access. A big open surface loses heat all night long. Covering most of that surface can do more than throwing another heater at it. But never make an opening so small or awkward that a calf, goat, or horse can get trapped. And keep combustibles away from heaters, cords, bulbs, and improvised warming setups. I have seen folks hang a heat lamp in a wooden pump house full of dry hay dust. That is not winter preparation. That is scheduling a fire. Number 3, the buried line that is only buried most of the way. Everybody says, my pipe is underground. Well, so was mine. Most of it. The trouble was the last 3 feet where it came up beside the tank. Down in the soil, the water line had protection. At the riser, it climbed through a shallow sleeve filled with wet leaves and cold air. The north wind blew straight through a gap around the pipe. That one little vertical section froze while 200 feet of buried pipe behind it stayed perfectly fine. This is what I mean when I say the last 10 feet causes most of the trouble. Cold follows weak spots. A shallow crossing over a culvert. A pipe under a gate where tires have worn the soil down. A line entering the barn through an unsealed hole. A valve box with a broken lid. A riser touching metal. A piece of pipe somebody added in July and covered with 2 inches of dirt because the ground was hard. Before winter, I walked the entire route from the source to every trough. I did not just look at the tank. I looked for erosion, exposed pipe, washed out soil, cracked valve boxes, ant beds, rodent holes, and anywhere water could sit around a fitting. I pay special attention to high spots and low spots because airlocks and trapped water both create trouble when I am draining a seasonal line. At risers, I block wind and insulate correctly, but I do not stuff ordinary fiberglass down into a wet hole and expect miracles. Wet insulation can become a cold sponge. The details depend on the installation, so if you are building new, bury below the local frost depth and set the riser up with drainage and service access from the beginning. Digging a little deeper once is cheaper than digging the same fitting every winter. And map your lines. I mean it. Draw them on paper. Measure from fence posts. Take photographs before the trench is covered. Mark shutoffs. Write down pipe size and fitting type. 10 years from now, when the grass has changed and the man who installed it cannot remember whether he turned left at the oak tree, that little map will be worth more than the pipe. During my bad freeze, I had 1 shutoff between the well and 3 troughs. 1 crack meant I had to shut water off to all 3. When I rebuilt it, I gave each branch its own valve. That way I can lose 1 pasture and keep the other 2 running. Isolation valves do not prevent a freeze, but they keep one failure from becoming the whole farm's failure. That is a difference between a repair and an emergency. Number 2, the backup water you cannot move. After the hydrant froze, I told myself we were all right because I had a water tote. It was a 275-gallon tote in a steel cage sitting behind the equipment shed. Plenty of water for an emergency. Only it was empty. So I filled it from the house, which took longer than I expected. Then I found out my little utility trailer had a low tire. Then I remembered that water weighs a little over 8 pounds a gallon.
That tote, full, weighed more than a ton before counting the cage and trailer. The ground was slick, the gate was narrow, and the tractor did not want to start. A backup you have never practiced is not a backup. It is a theory. I see this all the time. Folks say they will haul water if the system freezes, but they have not answered the next 6 questions. In what container? On what trailer? Pulled by what machine? Filled from which faucet? Through what hose? Emptied into the tank how? And can all of it work when the power is out, the road is iced, and the main hydrant is the thing that froze? I learned to build the backup backward from the animal. First, how much water do I need for one day? That changes with species, body size, feed, weather, pregnancy, and milk production, so I do not guess from one number off the internet. I know my herd, and I leave margin. Cold weather may reduce consumption, but dry hay can keep demand higher than you expect. Water is still a daily requirement in winter, not a summer luxury. Second, what is the smallest load I can safely move? 5-gallon buckets work for chickens and a couple goats. They are foolish for a herd of cattle. A full 55-gallon drum weighs around 460 pounds just in water. I do not put that in the back of a light cart and act surprised when the axle bends. Third, how will I transfer it? Gravity is slow but dependable if the tote is higher than the trough. A pump is faster, but it needs fuel or electricity and hoses that are not frozen. I keep the right fittings already attached because emergency plumbing in the dark is how small parts disappear into mud. Fourth, where do I fill if the well is down? I have a neighbor I can call, and he can call me. We worked that out before either of us needed it. I also keep clean, covered drinking water containers reserved for animals. They never hold herbicide, fertilizer, fuel, soap, or anything I would not pour into my own water glass. And every fall, I run the drill. I fill the tote part way, move it, hook up the hose, and put water into a tank. That little practice exposes flat tires, bad valves, missing adapters, dead pumps, and gates that do not open wide enough. It feels unnecessary right up until the morning it saves you. Now we have reached number 1, the winter water problem that cost me more labor than the split pipes, frozen valves, and dead heater combined. The problem was not freezing. The problem was not knowing soon enough. That is number 1, no reserve and no warning. For years, I ran small automatic troughs because they stayed cleaner and took less space. The float valve kept them full, so I figured everything was fine. But a small trough has almost no time built into it. If the supply quits at noon and you do not inspect until evening, the animals can drink it empty before you ever see a problem. The system fails silently. That is what happened in the calving lot. The valve froze after the morning check. 12 cows drank the trough down. By late afternoon, they were crowding the fence near the barn, and I thought they were waiting for feed. They were telling me about the water, and I was too busy looking at the wrong thing. When I finally walked over, the trough was dry. Not frozen over, dry. That changed how I think about winter water. A big tank is not just a container, it is time. Stored water gives you hours to discover a failed valve, a tripped breaker, or a dead well. A visible level gives you information. A second trough gives you options. A simple marker on the side tells you whether the water has dropped since morning. Now, I am not telling everybody to buy the biggest tank they can find. Oversized tanks can be hard to clean, slow to refill, dangerous if poorly placed, and difficult to keep open. I am saying capacity ought to be chosen partly by how long it carries your animals when the supply stops. That is a different calculation from whether the float can keep up on a normal day. I want enough reserve that a failure after morning chores does not become a thirsty herd before the next check. I want to see the water level without climbing a fence. I want the trough positioned so I can reach it with backup water. And I want more than one watering point when animals are concentrated, because one dominant cow can make a small opening useless to everybody behind her. Most important, I check winter water at least twice a day, and in hard weather I check it more. I look at 4 things. Water is present, animals can reach it, fresh water is entering, and the power or heat system is working. Those are 4 separate checks. Breaking a hole in the ice is not enough. A little hole can freeze back fast, and sharp ice can cut a muzzle. Water under the ice can be filthy. A tank can have an open spot while the inlet is frozen and the level is falling. So I do not drive past and look for shine. I stop and prove the system. Here's what that looks like on this place now. About 3 weeks before our first likely hard freeze, I start at the well house. I check the pressure tank, gauge, pressure switch, and every fitting I can see. I make sure the little heater or thermostatic protection in that space works, if the setup uses one. I seal drafts without sealing combustion equipment or ventilation that needs air. I clear out feed sacks, cardboard, oily rags, and mouse nests. A pump house is not a storage closet in winter. Then I find the main shutoff and operate it. A valve you have not moved in 6 years may not move when you need it. I label it. I make sure my wife can find it. I make sure anybody doing chores can find it. If a pipe splits while I am gone, the location of the shutoff should not be family folklore. Next, I walk the lines. Every hydrant gets opened, closed, and checked for drainage. Every hose gets disconnected. Every valve box gets a lid. Every exposed section gets inspected. I do not wrap heat cable around a pipe first and ask questions later. Cable has to be approved for the pipe material, installed exactly as directed, protected from damage, and powered safely. More cable and more overlap can create more heat than the pipe can take. Then I go to the tanks. I clean them before winter because manure, algae, leaves, and feed make every cold weather job nastier. I inspect drains and plugs. I check float valves under full flow. I tighten mounts. I replace cracked hose sections. I look at where cattle stand because a muddy approach turns into a slick slab when it freezes. If the ground needs gravel or better drainage, I do that before the first cold rain. I put windbreaks where they help, but I leave room for animals to approach without getting cornered. I secure insulated covers. I check that heaters are approved for the tank and protected from livestock. I test the ground fault outlet with its test button, then verify it resets. If that sentence sounds too basic, good. Basic things are what keep farms running. After that, I prepare the repair shelf. On mine there is a spare float valve, 2 hose repair ends, washers, pipe plugs, caps in the sizes I actually use, a short length of approved pipe, unions, clamps, thread sealant, a heat gun for jobs where it is appropriate, and the exact tools needed to shut down each part of the system. I keep electrical work separate and safe. I keep a headlamp with fresh batteries hanging by the door. I also keep a laminated card with the system drawn on it. Main shutoff, branch valves, which trough each branch feeds, pipe sizes, breaker numbers, the plumber's phone number, the electrician's phone number, the neighbor's number. In an emergency, memory gets stupid. Paper stays smart. Now let us talk money, because winter preparation can sound expensive until you compare it to winter repair. The year I got caught, I spent about $1,800 after the fact. Some of that was equipment I still use, but plenty of it was the premium you pay for needing the right part today. Add fuel, wasted water, a plumber's emergency trip, and 2 days when I did almost nothing except make water move from one place to another. The following fall, I spent about $650 preparing the system properly. A little over $100 went into new valves and fittings.
Around $80 went into weatherproof electrical improvements and having questionable work checked. The rest went into a better heater setup, insulated tank protection, gravel at one approach, spare parts, and plumbing changes that let me isolate each branch. That $650 has paid me back every winter since. Not because nothing ever freezes. That would be a lie. We still get ice. Equipment still gets old. A cow can break something that survived 10 years of weather. What changed is the size of the failure. Now when a float valve sticks, I catch it while the tank still has reserve. When a branch leaks, I shut off that branch instead of the whole farm. When a heater trips a circuit, I find it during the next check. When I need to haul water, the tote is ready, the fittings match, and the trailer tires have air. The goal is not to build a farm that can never fail. The goal is to build a farm that fails small. That one idea is worth more than every gadget in the feed store. And while we're here, let me tell you about a few fixes I do not trust. I do not trust a bare light bulb as the only thing protecting a pump house. Bulbs burn out, fixtures corrode, power fails, and dry material catches fire. If a safe, approved heat source is part of your system, install and maintain it like the important equipment it is. I do not trust leaving water running all night unless the entire setup was designed for continuous overflow and the water has somewhere safe to go. Flow can prevent freezing in some systems, but wasted water can flood a pen, create dangerous ice, overload a well, and turn good footing into a skating rink. On the Texas High Plains, water is too valuable to pour away because planning was easier than plumbing. I do not trust wrapping a pipe in old towels and plastic. Cloth gets wet. Wet cloth freezes. Then you have built an ice coat around the pipe. I do not trust pouring boiling water on frozen plastic fittings. Sudden heat can damage material, and thawed water may come through a crack you cannot shut off. Before thawing anything, know where the valve is. Use a safe, controlled method. Never use an open flame on plumbing. A torch can start a fire, damage pipe, ignite hidden material, and create a much worse day than the one you already had. I do not trust snow or ice as an animal's water supply. Animals may eat some, but that does not mean it meets their needs, and forcing them to consume enough frozen water costs body heat and leaves too much to chance. And I do not trust one check a day during extreme weather. Winter failures happen between chores. The colder and windier it gets, the shorter the time between checks ought to be. There is one more part of this that does not get talked about enough, and that is how animals behave when water gets limited. The strongest animals drink first. The timid ones wait. Cattle crowd a small opening. Goats climb where they should not. Horses paw ice. Chickens may stop drinking before you notice, and then feed intake and egg production can fall. If you walk up and see water, that does not prove every animal has been able to use it. Watch the animals, not only the equipment. Are they crowding the tank? Are they licking ice or fittings?
Are they waiting at a gate they normally ignore? Is one animal guarding the only open spot? Is the water dirty because the level is too low? Has feed consumption changed? Animals will often tell you a water system is failing before the gauge does, but they do not speak in words. They speak in patterns. That dry trough in my calving lot embarrassed me, but it taught me to stop treating water like background scenery. Feed gets all the attention because we buy it, stack it, measure it, and watch cattle eat it. Water is quiet. It moves underground. It refills itself, right up until it does not.
And when it does not, every other part of the operation gets harder. So if you remember nothing else from this, remember these three things. First, prepare the whole chain, not just the tank. Start at the source and follow the water all the way to the animal. The weakest valve, riser, outlet, hose, or fitting decides whether the system works. Second, reserve buys time. Build enough stored water and enough backup capacity that one silent failure does not become an emergency before you can catch it. Third, inspection beats equipment. The best heater, deepest line, and most expensive automatic waterer still need a man or woman to stop, look, and prove that water is available. That is my winter routine now. Morning check before feed, evening check before dark, extra check when the wind comes hard out of the north or the temperature falls faster than forecast. I carry a headlamp, a valve key, dry gloves, and the kind of respect for cold weather that I did not have 15 years ago. Because Texas winter is not always long, but it does not have to be long to do damage. One hard night can find the hose you forgot, the hydrant that does not drain, the outlet that trips, the riser with a draft, and the empty tote behind the shed. Cold weather is patient that way. It does not need every part of your farm to be wrong. It only needs one. Go out tomorrow and walk your water system from beginning to end. Open every hydrant. Shut it and listen. Work every float. Test every heater and protected outlet. Find every valve. Drain every hose. Look at the water reserve and ask yourself one honest question. If this line quits at midnight, how do these animals drink at daylight? If the answer starts with, I reckon I could probably, you do not have an answer yet. Fix it while the sun is up and the hardware store still has parts. That is the winter water problem nobody warned me about. It was never just frozen water. It was a system with no margin, no warning, and no practiced way around the failure. These days, I still break ice now and then. I still carry a bucket. I still get cold fingers and say things I would not say in church. Farming has not turned easy. But I do not wake up to that silence anymore and wonder where to start. I know where the water comes from. I know where it can stop. I know how much time I have. And I know what I will do next. That is not fancy. It is not automatic. It will not look impressive in a farm magazine. But when the north wind is shaking the barn at 5:30 in the morning and every animal on the place is waiting on you, a simple system you understand is worth more than a complicated system you trusted. If this helped you, do me a favor and hit that like button. It truly does help this little channel reach more folks who are trying to keep a place running without learning every lesson the expensive way. And if you are not subscribed, come on and join us. We talk honest, practical farming every week. The kind that comes with muddy boots, busted fittings, and receipts I wish I did not have. I want to hear from you down in the comments. What is the coldest night your water system ever survived? And what was the one little thing that failed first? Somebody reading your answer may fix that exact thing before their next freeze. Now go check those hoses, find your shutoff, and give yourself more time than I had. Take care, y'all.